everyone. Good evening. Welcome to today's LawWorks Legal Primer series, Unlocking Gen AI, Legal Risks, Rights and Responsibilities. This webinar is organized by Bono SG in collaboration with NTUC. My name is Bozy Lu, and I'll be your moderator for this webinar. Before we begin, here are some housekeeping matters to take note of. Firstly, Q&A. Today, we will be using Pigeonhole Live for our Q&A session. You can submit your questions at any point during the webinar and also vote for the questions by others that you would like answered. If you have a smartphone or a tablet with you, just launch your internet browser and enter pigeonhole.at into the address bar. Then you can key in our event passcode, which is LawWorks2403. That's spelled as LAWWORKS 2403, as shown on the slide. Alternatively, you can click on the link shared in the chat function to launch Pigeonhole Live on your device. If you are viewing this webinar on your desktop or laptop, you should receive an invitation to launch Pigeonhole. Finally, please note that today's discussion is not intended to substitute any form of professional legal advice. If you require specific legal advice, please consult a lawyer. Now, this is the moment that everyone's been waiting for. I would like to very warmly welcome our distinguished speakers for today's webinar, Dr. Stanley Lai, Mr. Yang Yen Thaw, and Mr. Patrick Tay. I will now do a quick introduction of each of our speakers today. First, I start with Stanley. Stanley is a senior counsel who specializes in all forms of intellectual property, litigation, and arbitration, and information technology disputes, and he is also a commercial litigator. He maintains a strong advisory practice for IP, data management, and cybersecurity, serving a broad spectrum of clients. In the sphere of artificial intelligence, Stanley continues to advise clients on issues relating to intellectual property, data protection, content regulation, as well as legal tech. As a veteran copyright lawyer, Stanley currently serves as the Deputy President of the Copyright Tribunal and sits on the panel of arbitrators in the Singapore International Arbitration Centre, specializing in intellectual property disputes. Stanley is currently the chairman of the Intellectual Property Office in Singapore. He is also an author of many published journal articles and was the first Singaporean-born lawyer to be conferred a PhD by the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Dr. Stanley has also been awarded various awards and merits, including the Public Service Medal in 2020, the Public Service Star in 2024. On 31st August 2022, Stanley was also awarded the Singapore Academy of Law Merit Award, which is an award that's given to individuals who have served in promoting and advancing the objectives of the Singapore Academy of Law. Welcome, Stanley. Next, we have Yen Thaw. Yen Thaw is an author, techie, corporate lawyer, and holds various certifications as AI consultant, registered management consultant, as well as associate adult educator. He has held senior management and executive positions in management and law in listed as well as private limited companies, from various countries. Now, Yen Thaw's work covers consulting and teaching in the following areas. It's a lot, like artificial intelligence for business and enterprise, business negotiations, critical core skills, design thinking, AI, data analytics, data protection, joint ventures, mergers and acquisitions, you name it, this guy's got it in his pocket. Now, he is presently leveraging his above experiences and companies that seek to future-proof businesses through law and management, digital transformation, data analytics, digital intelligence, and data protection. Last but not least, we have Patrick. Patrick is the Assistant Secretary General of NTUC and the Director of NTUC's Legal Services and Strategy Division. He is also the Member of Parliament representing Pioneer SMC since 2020. Stanley, Yen Thaw, and Patrick, Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks. Thank you.
Now, for everyone out there who's listening in to us, our schedule for today is very simple. From 7 to 8:30 p.m., we are going to engage in a panel discussion on the legal issues of Gen AI. And then from 8:30 to 9 p.m., there will be a guided experiential workshop by Yen Thaw, and you will need a laptop or tablet to join in for that. Okay. Now, for all those who are joining in to us today, thank you so much once again for spending your evening with us. We have amongst us, based on the sign-up sheet, a really wide range of audience members from various walks of life. So bearing that in mind, what we will endeavor to do today is really to break down complex concepts that we have at hand into simple terms so that we can engage everyone in this conversation today. The crux of our topic this evening is on Gen AI, which is short for Generative Artificial Intelligence, and the intersection of this fascinating technology with the law at large, particularly on the legal risks, rights, and responsibilities. Now, in the past, right, when anyone has mentioned AI, some of the images and tools that could pop up to our minds would be things like robots that are quite human-like. You have Sophia. And some people might think of programs that have beaten world champion in age-old games, like, for instance, chess. That's IBM's Deep Blue. And also the game Go, where you have Google's AlphaGo topping the world champion. And perhaps in more recent times, some of the AI tools that we talk about would be things like virtual assistants, Apple's Siri, Amazon's Alexa, that have natural language processing capabilities. These were really all in the early 1980s and up till the 2000s. The surge in AI developments and now Gen AI greeted the world in early 2020. Particularly, Gen AI has brought about a lot of hype and wonder in communities worldwide. But honestly, amidst the glitz and glamour, there is a fair bit of fear, apprehension, and paranoia in the mix. For the purposes of the webinar today, we will discuss three main topics. The first is we will delve into whether Gen AI can be trusted. You know, with all of the trust issues that we have, can we trust Gen AI? Secondly, we will delve into data protection and privacy issues before ending off into intellectual property ownership rights and fights, as well as disputes. So we've got a lot coming up today. Now, at the end of the day, what we hope that you will bring back would be some cautionary notes on Gen AI, as well as insights on how Gen AI can empower and propel you in both your professional and private lives. So to kick us off the session today, you know, it'll be really helpful to go around the room to put forth a working definition and some illustrations of Gen AI for everyone so that we're all on the same page. For that, I'm going to get Stanley to start off with his definition of Gen AI and some illustrations. Stanley, please.
Thanks very much, Bozy. And it's really great to be amongst you. And thank you very much for the kind invitation to join all of you today. And thank you for making the time to listen to all of us. In terms of what is generative AI, I think if I can just refer to the slide in front of you, and you will see it's a type of artificial intelligence that can create new content, and such as text, images, as well as music. And we speak of this technology as multimodal. You're able to basically receive a product that comprises one or more of these elements at the same time. And those of you who have been playing with GPT 3 or GPT-4o or GPT-4, you will have some hint on what your product can actually produce. Generative AI models are typically trained on large data sets of existing content. They generate new content that is similar to what they were trained on, but also different. And of course, you can appreciate that this gives rise to IP concerns. So first and foremost, if you train by uploading a lot of text or a lot of images or photographs or paintings into a particular LLM or large language module, what comes out at the output end is generally what people pay attention to and whether intellectual property is infringed. But at the same time, even if intellectual property or copyright may not be infringed from the output, the very act of input results in a copy being made, and many will say, well, you inputted the work without my permission, and therefore that constitutes an infringement. So put very simply, that is one facet of the problem. Now, it's not the only facet of the problem. You also see Gen AI applications giving rise to fake news, disinformation. They tend to misuse personal data because equally, just as you can put artwork and literary works, text into the input phase of the training module of an LLM, you can also do the same with personal data. And before you know it, your personal information gets amalgamated and may even be produced for different reasons. Let's carry on. You also see the next slide, please. If you can actually see also the different models, and you have examples like Midjourney, DALL-E, and Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft Copilot is interesting because it does integrate generative AI into Microsoft Office apps such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. Those of you who are on Microsoft 365 will be able to take full advantage of this experience. It does enhance productivity. It assists with document creation, analysis, and even content summarization. And certainly looking at the current technology, you will see that in terms of content summarization, generative AI has shown to be very effective. You can also draft emails, summarize long documents. If you're used to writing emails or text in a certain manner, Copilot can actually learn and adapt to your voice or your style of writing. And before you know it, you can create PowerPoint slides using that as an assist. So it's a very potent and very useful technology, which can also raise other concerns. You will see also, and maybe I ask to move to the next slide, in terms of different types of content, realistic images of people and places, you see that generative AI is able to produce a vast array of different products. And I'll have some examples later to show you how extreme this can be. And of course, people will say, well, none of this is authorized. Where's the license? The need for a license, which is authorization, and the need for compensation if you're making use of my intellectual property. So you have, with that, deepfakes, text-to-diffusion models, and also in the LLMs, you see this moving very rapidly and growing. Next, in terms of the training, you have neural networks and machine learning models that are deep learning. Alternatively, for generative AI, you can also have training that takes place on large data sets. You also have generative models, which basically create new content by sampling from other learner distributions. And that is the whole essence of generative AI, is not just one form. And even as we speak, it is a constantly evolving progressive technology that will only become more and more effective with time. There's also image suggestion, diagrams of neural networks or machine learning processes that also form part of the AI creation process. So if you look at the different types of generative AI, and I move on to the next slide, different models and techniques can produce different types of content. So you will see in these slides, which I'm happy to make available to you, generative adversarial networks, or GANs, variational autoencoders, or VAEs, transformers and diffusion models. You will see more and more realistic images in terms of sounds. You may even see dead celebrities coming back to life. It's almost a truism that going forward, the media industry and even film and even television industry will be disrupted by this technology potentially, because you will be able to resurrect actors who have passed on, but nevertheless can surface with resampled voices based on what generative AI are able to create. So it is something that we take very seriously, but it's also very exciting. So just as another illustration, if you look at the use of artificial intelligence by celebrities, those of you who are old enough, and I cannot imagine, I think the general average age of the audience that we have will probably not remember Madonna's True Blue album released in the 80s. Those of you that may that recognize this may get a sense of nostalgia. La Isla Bonita is one song which Madonna sang. But you also see now how that song has now been adapted to the voice of other singers who actually had nothing to do with the original production or the performance. So if you look hard enough in the internet, you may even find Cher, who's also a very famous singer, basically singing that song, and her voice is dubbed into the very song which Madonna sang. And so this mixing and matching is going to cause a lot of, has caused a lot of distress to the performers. They are basically saying, well, how am I going to be assured that my performance is going to stay as my performance, and whether somebody else will come along and basically mimic my performance, or worse still, superimpose his or her voice into my performance. So I'll just stop there for now in answer to Bozy's question, just to show that, it is a technology that is exciting, a lot of potential, but also there are risk factors that we need to pay attention to.
Thank you, Stanley.
Thank you.
Now, honestly, when it comes to Gen AI, it's not something that is, so easily comprehensible and could be quite complicated at times. So now I move on to Yen Thaw, who's an educator and very often, teaches individuals about what Gen AI is. Yen Thaw, what is perhaps the easiest way, and how would you introduce Gen AI to someone who has no background in tech at all?
You can call me YT for starters, because I'm a Mandarin illiterate, and my name is supposed to be pronounced Yen Thaw. So YT works. The other day I had, I don't know whether I can call it an inverse epiphany. I had a fear, and the fear was, if they ban ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, or any of those programs, I die. I've become so reliant upon that. And anyone who's used it will find that it permeates into every aspect of their own lives. You can use it all the way. I mean, starting off from, armchair psychologist questions to philosophy questions to technical questions, it'll give you an answer. And it is so realistic that it has a lot of people fooled as if there's another real person sitting on the other side who's typing out the answers for you. It's just a tool. I always say that AI is not a substitute. Though it's very tempting for us when we start using AI and says, hey, you can do all my work for me. That's where the danger lies. That's where you start slipping into some sort of a funk where you just want somebody else to do the job for you. It's just like a hammer, just like a power tool. And there is actually no concept called artificial intelligence. It's just an umbrella term. It's all encompassing, right? It's like calling it the animal kingdom. And there's so many other subsets underneath the animal kingdom. So back in 2021, I came up with this definition. And there are lots of definitions of AI in the market. So back in 2021, I came up with this definition, which I hope was comprehensive enough. It's to do with computer science and engineering. It's a system of machines that uses algorithms and computer programs. And it definitely requires data. And it learns by itself. In machine learning, they call it as learning by experience. So you have AI as the umbrella term. If you deep dive, the subset of AI is machine learning. Machine learning uses algorithms, uses a bit of calculus, statistics. If you deep dive further, then you have deep learning. Deep learning is essentially neural networks, and it uses combinations of algorithms, and it starts asking itself questions. So using neural networks, it develops what is called as natural language processing. From natural language processing, we develop something called as large language models. So large language models basically mean, if I ask you how many words are there in the English dictionary, you would say this much, right? So that's the English dictionary thickness. How many sentences can you make from this? It goes on. So you've input the entire language into this large language model, or LLMs as they call it, and think of it like a word cloud. It finds everything clustered around those word clouds, many word clouds, and then strings up a sentence of its own. Hence, generative AI. It generates, using artificial intelligence, new content, whether it's in terms of text, images, as Stanley mentioned, text, images, or audio, video, visuals, even art. So that's essentially how it works. And you have different types. Large language models are mostly for text and voice. Programs like Midjourney, DALL-E can generate images. We are moving nowadays towards the time where you dictate and then it creates. Earlier, you had to create a prompt which describes everything that you want and it generates. Even as we speak today, day to day, the technology is changing. And yeah, we're all playing catch up. So in simple terms, that's what Gen AI is. But you always remember Gigo, right? Those who studied computer science in the good old days in the early 90s or 80s, Gigo. Garbage in, garbage out. Put in garbage, you get out garbage. Yeah, that's as good as it is.
So, when we talk about AI and garbage in, garbage out, there's still a fair bit of human input in this, right? We cannot take away the human no matter how powerful the AI becomes. So now I want to tap on Patrick's brains, right? We've got all these definitions of AI, Gen AI. How do you see it being played out in the grassroots where you are, with the people, the labor market? What are some of the illustrations or tools that are very commonly used that you have sensed from the ground?
Yeah. So thanks for that. And thanks both Stanley and Yen Thaw for articulating Gen AI. Well, in a simpler way, I see, artificial intelligence at work, in the workplace, in various settings and organizations for longest time. But now we have generative AI dawning on us about the past 1.5 years. Generative AI meaning, in a way, the AI can learn and create new content as shared. And so this learn by itself and this creating by itself, I think this is the word generative comes into play. And in the last couple of years, we see a lot of play into the metaverse, blockchain. But now I think Gen AI seems to be the buzzword for every organization, any workplace, and in various sectors. And in fact, in the NTUC and the labor movement, we were quite particularly concerned when we heard, when WEF, World Economic Forum, came out slightly more than a year ago and say, when with the dawn of Gen AI, we're going to lose so many jobs. So that was something which we were quite concerned. Obviously, because we look after the interests and welfare of workers, and we did a deep dive with various economic agencies and ourselves as well. And some good news is that I think one of the key findings from us doing this deep dive into the impact of Gen AI is that yes, there will be job losses for sure, because it can do quite a lot of the things that are pretty menial, pretty run of the mill and routine. Because it's able to learn by itself, you'll be able to create content by itself, both pictures, text, music, name it, you have it. So that's one area. But however, it also means that in the workplace, it can improve your productivity. I know many of my colleagues, including workers, including many organizations that we interact with in the past year or so, have gone quite big into Gen AI, particularly not just ChatGPT, but also the use of Microsoft 365 and your Copilot. I think it's quite rampant now, the use of that. Even students are using it quite a bit. And I think in various organizations and sectors, we are seeing them creating, not just tapping on such generic stuff, quite readily available, off the shelf, but also creating their own Gen AI systems within their organizations, because they want to block away some of the issues which we will discuss later on personal data, collection of data, secrets, confidential information, as well as the interplay with some of the ethics principles and IP rights of the various things that will be churned out and that will be inputted in. So I think it's exciting times ahead. But back to the findings. The silver lining of that finding was that yes, we will have job losses, but I think that at the end of the day, the net jobs gain is still positive. Why? Because many of the current jobs may be transformed to more higher value add, more quality jobs, and hopefully better paying ones. And I think productivity as a whole will increase for sure, because now you have this additional tool to augment what you're doing and to make things, well, in a way easier, safer, and smarter as well.
Thanks, Patrick, for
I'd
that.
like to compliment what Patrick has just mentioned, right? If you don't mind me adding,
Yeah, sure.
said he did mention about job losses. He did mention about what is AI going to be, right? You know, back in the days when you had pottery, they invented the pottery wheel. We all thought all the people who make pots are going to go out of a job. You don't find potters anymore. I don't look at job losses. Back in the day when I was practicing a lot of mergers and acquisitions, I was quite against, you know, the first thing you do when you merge two companies or you acquire another company is layoffs, because there's a lot of redundancy and duplicates. I always look at these two words, job transformation. I don't look at job losses. And I'm going to do a shameless plug for our workshop later on in the evening. I hope to be able to share a few slides with you on how you can use your own intelligence and your wisdom. I would use the word wisdom. I think we have a slide coming up towards the end. How your wisdom can save you from losing your jobs, and how do you transform yourself? So I'll try and see if I can expand on that. People stay on, we'll definitely share those slides with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Please do stay on. And that very nicely segues into our next section of this webinar, which is really, can AI be trusted? You know, sometimes we look at something and we say, oh, if it's too good to be true, you know, do we really just believe in it wholesale? Right now, with how the examples of Gen AI tools that have been shared by the panelists are very pervasive in a lot of aspects of our lives, it's, you know, maybe a sixth sense kind of feeling of being cautious, right? Of how these developments could really potentially maybe even take over us human beings. Gen AI sounds like, you know, to the layman that I am, something that has a lot of immeasurable potential, and it seems like it could resolve any sort of issues in the world. And it may become smarter than the smartest person alive, you know. That scares me a little bit. So I want to now venture into the topic of, can AI trusted? And first of all, I want to pick on YT's brain on this, because when it comes to the content generation by AI, like you said, garbage in, garbage out, hopefully treasure in, treasure out as well, there may be a lack of formal references and or citations, right? It's anything that you put in the material and the information that is being produced in the output. YT, how do we then know that the output from Gen AI, as professionally and perhaps beautifully crafted as it is, would be true and accurate? Or is it caveated to be true and accurate to the best of its abilities? And what is the technology behind, you know, the creation of this content, YT?
I couldn't help laughing when I saw this sentence, can Gen AI be trusted? Can you trust your spouse? Can you trust your husband? Can you trust your wife? It's a progress, right? It's a progress. And then you learn over a few years that I got to watch my words with my wife, because it can be interpreted in a myriad different ways. And eventually you want the right output. If you bring in a bouquet at the wrong time, she's going to whack you on the head with a bouquet. It's the same with Gen AI. So on a different note, when you work with Gen AI, all practitioners, all AI practitioners, specialists, experts will tell you, you have to treat AI like a 5-year-old. And then you are the ones who are going to set up guardrails. And when we talk about Gen AI, I think it's a good term to use, because as Stanley pointed out earlier, you have your Ways, you have your GANs, you've got your GPTs, your transform models, you've got many, many models. All of them come under Gen AI. But I think what most of us are looking at are ChatGPT, Copilot. And I think a couple of days back, if you're all subscribers to Microsoft 365, Copilot has been released for you to use for free. Of course, the paid version has a few extra benefits. The internet version is much better. When you use MS Word or MS PowerPoint on the web, it's much better than your native apps. But in all this, what you're essentially learning is this fancy term called prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is just a fancy way of asking questions. And if your prompts are right, and that's what we will do in the workshop a little later, if your prompts are right, you will still not find a satisfactory answer. So it's like your same spouse, it's like your husband, your wife. You keep asking, you keep working, you keep experimenting what they like, what they don't like, and finally you come to a situation where both parties are happy. So that's what you're looking at when you're using a Gen AI. You've got to keep asking questions, and you've got to know where your guardrails are, which we will share a little later on that. Yeah. So you can trust it as much as you can trust a kitchen knife. You need to know where to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
So for YT, he's given us the example of trusting Gen AI, like trying to trust your spouse. It's a progress of how you interact with the tool, the system. It's not a given that whatever that you put in is going to come out as something that is perfect. You still have to, have those guardrails, etc. But let's say, you do use Gen AI, and perhaps for the uninitiated or people who just really trust in the tech, what happens, with the issue of misinformation that can come with it? In the practical sense, if someone really relies on it wholesale, this is where I want to turn to Stanley, because I'm very curious now, in the event that one wrongly relies on a misrepresentation or misinterpretation of Gen AI output, whose fault is it? Who can we arrow to say, hey, not my fault, blame this person or tool? Can the Gen AI tool even be blamed in the first place?
Well, I think the short answer, Bozy, is that you can blame the Gen AI tool for the misrepresentation or the wrong information, but ultimately, I think you're responsible. So you can blame the tool, but you are responsible. So, and this is the nature of generative AI. If I can just ask for some slides, yes. There are risk factors. You've heard of hallucinations. This is a recurring problem with generative AI, especially the earlier versions. I have to say that the size of the parameters for generative AI large language modules has also increased very exponentially. And I think, I'm waiting for bated breath when GPT-5 is released, because I think that will bring you into, I read somewhere, something in the region of 17.5 trillion parameters, which is a big boost from what it used to be with ChatGPT 2, 3, and so on. But you will have hallucinations. You also have misinformation risks. And you can also have, large language modules basically processing vast amounts of unauthorized personal data. It can also create very harmful content. But, just as an example, Bozy, of taking responsibility, I'll just ask for the next slide, where some time back, some New York lawyers practicing in New York were sanctioned because what they used was they asked ChatGPT to help them draft their written submissions before the court. And these submissions were drafted by ChatGPT, but they also created fictitious cases and case authorities. And of course, that got the judge very livid, because the judge is saying, look, you are advocates first and foremost. Your duties are owed to the court. You have no reason to rely on the generative AI tool, but not take responsibility for your submissions to court. Now, that is a very interesting cautionary tale, if you like, to all of us. At the same time, the judge also is not completely unsympathetic, because he says there's nothing inherently improper in lawyers using AI for assistance. But he said that, look, the ethics rules are such that, look, you are, there is an obligation of gatekeeping on the part of attorneys to ensure that what they file is accurate and true. So if I can move on to another slide, judges have also responded very differently, between different jurisdictions. So Lord Justice Colin Burst, for example, from the United Kingdom, has made a reference in a conference held by the Law Society. And he said, look, basically ChatGPT had, real potential. He summarized the paragraph in his judgment using ChatGPT. And he said, look, it's very useful. I found it very useful. And my own personal experience with it is actually when it comes to the summarization of principles, ChatGPT actually does very well for you. If you want to summarize the law of negligence or the law of nuisance, you can get a very quick, snappy paragraph from ChatGPT. Just don't ask it to cite you authorities, because that's where things may go a bit wrong. But at the same time, if you look at our own Academy of Law, they've created GPT Law, where a lot of our cases in due time will be given proper summarization, and that can be used if, say, you're sitting in a board meeting, or you're about to advise a board of directors over a very contentious and thorny issue, and suddenly a case comes to mind, but you really, you struggle to remember what the real finding or the holding was in the decision. Well, GPT Law may come to your rescue and help you. So that's another illustration how, is to make use of the technology that suits you. Now, if I can move to the next slide, even in our Singapore courts, for example, you will see now, it's in a registrar's circular, how AI is to be used. But at the same time, by counsel, but at the same time, the courts are also venturing to use generative AI to resolve small claim tribunal claims, disputes. There will be no shortage of new applications where Gen AI will be used to actually come into a minor adjudicative function in the first instance, but eventually you can see, depending on, YT mentioned prompt engineering, and that cannot be underestimated, because the quality of the prompts that are fed into AI is what will enhance actually the trust of the output and the quality of the output. So, I mean, to use an example from YT's M&A experience, recently I had to judge a prompt engineering contest organized by the Academy of Law, where all the students were basically given a worksheet which created an M&A scenario. And what it said, look, you need to come out and use a prompt that will create the document, the transaction. And within the agreement, you need to be able to safeguard the rights, the continued rights and employment of the workforce. So something that, we pay great attention to. And so the quality of the prompts, you evaluate what each person is filling in. How do they make reference to safeguarding employees' rights? For how long? You can't disturb the workforce for at least 2-3 years. And you'll find that the more specific you are in telling the GPT to create, the more likely you're going to face a better product. As opposed to very bare instructions, you also get a very bare product. And I think that I think is the reason why, as much as you want to blame the tool, you are very much also at this stage of the development, the author of what goes in. And so if you are actually not capable of asking the right questions, you may also regret the answers that come out. So that's one level of trust, which I think we need to deal with. And I'll just say a little bit about deepfakes, if I can move on to the next slide. Deepfakes are a real problem because, in Singapore, we actually solved this problem without knowing that we had a problem to solve. When we created our fake news law some years ago, there was a lot of controversy. Oh, are you curtailing speech, and are you preventing people from saying speaking? You're basically correcting falsehoods. But on hindsight, it's also become a very potent weapon against deepfakes, because deepfakes are generated by artificial intelligence. Obviously the person producing it cannot be a bona fide actor, someone that's acting in good faith. It's obviously designed to be disruptive, designed to mislead. And so that's one excellent regime. And especially when you enter into the realm of elections, and in some countries it's actually upon us, deepfakes actually feature very prominently in in the election cycle. So recently, and I'll move on to the next slide. There's a general ban of deepfakes of candidates during elections. Singapore passed the Elections Integrity of Online Advertising Amendment Act, and this was passed in the middle of last month, so very recent. But you appreciate that it's even faster than the fake news regime, because the fake news regime, when you want to take an application, you still have to apply to court, get a hearing date, and so on. But in the context of an election, you have 9 days. You need to move in, almost immediately to curtail the deepfake of whichever electoral candidate is being put up. And it's a very effective piece of legislation, which I think will be put to good effect. So even as an illustration, the minister, the next slide, please. When she moved the bill, she actually created a deep fake of herself actually speaking in her real voice. And it was pretty amazing. You can see the transcript on the right side of the slide on what Ms. Josephine Teo said. And it only took 1 hour to create this. So that just shows how easy it is to create deepfakes in the context of elections, when you really put a paramount importance on the truth that goes on. And of course, I can't resist but showing the next set of slides, which may alarm some people, but it's let me just say it's illustrative only and not true at all. But in the context of the US, there's a recent deepfake image going around with Trump and Kamala Harris, in intimate circumstances, kissing. Thank you, YT, and even giving birth to what must be a child that is affiliated with
that image. I cannot unsee now.
I know, but it's amazing.
Yeah, it's very realistic.
What's going on, and if you listen to the music behind the original video leading to this feed, you can more or less guess who the originator is. I won't mention it. I also don't want to create a new buzz and search amongst our audience to actually look for the provenance of this. But it's interesting. So next slide. The prevalence of deepfakes of politicians in other countries is just going to continue. And, I think we're very fortunate that in this country, at least, we do have tools in our cupboard that can deal with it. And so you will hear Joe Biden's voice carrying on. It features in robocalls that are used to discourage Democrats from participating in a presidential primary. I mean, you get things like that are coming into the discourse, and you can just see how dangerous it is.
Actually, with all of that, even as someone who's in a millennial, right?
Yes.
Sort of younger, and who's looking up to all the distinguished individuals sitting next to me today, I can't help but think about the next time I go online, the next time I come into contact with social media, what are the things that I'm seeing? Are they real? Do I take them, at face value? How do I fact check them? And, who is going to really be the gatekeeper of truth? The deep fakes, the hallucinations, and, fake news that can come about. I can only imagine perhaps, for the senior citizens of our community, right, especially in an aging population, what are some of the things that, can be put in place for them to identify even some of these AI generated images, and also just news as a whole. So I want to turn the camera now to Patrick and just seek your experience and also expertise on how on the ground things are like when it comes to receiving these sorts of news and also new media images. How do you see people fighting back or even trying to identify, fact check for themselves?
Yeah, if I may share both at the community front as well as in the workplace front. I think with generative AI and what you've heard from both Stanley and Yen Thaw, some of the things that are happening, definitely generative AI is here to stay. I think we can't avoid that. We just need to take it head on and to see its possibilities and its probabilities as well. At the same time, I think in the workplace front, I thought important for our workers to be equipped with a rudimentary knowledge of what the capabilities and extent of generative AI, and also its limitations, its various risks and issues is, I think, very, very important. So we have been on this education journey, both NTUC and the labour movement, together with our many of the companies and different tripartite partners, going full force, forging ahead into equipping the workforce with the relevant knowledge. We don't need everyone to be an expert, to even do have very, very deep knowledge, but at least have the operating knowledge, and to the extent the veracity and the ethics behind using a Gen AI. It's not very, very important, so that they at least have a working knowledge of it. I think that's something that we are soldiering on and journeying into. That's in the workplace, because we foresee a job transformation in a very, very big way. It varies from industry to industry. I mean, I've engagements with the financial and professional services sector. I've engagements with the manufacturing sector. I've also engagements with many of our freelance and self-employed workers as well. So I think Gen AI impacts them in a different level and different spectrum and different scale and extent, depending on, for example, in the financial sector and professional services sector, very, very big on this. Using Gen AI for internal systems, compliance checks, etc., and make things a bit more easier and faster as well. At the same time, administrators, middle office, back office, doing checks, generating mails, letters, papers, speeches, etc. It provides a good baseline, but I think at the end of the day, the human touch is still very important. Because something that the Gen AI can't produce is, your human experiences and anecdotal stuff, which are new and renewed day after day. I thought that's important. So that's where the creativity and the value add you can. Because as Gen AI systems, you can learn very, very fast. So every time you input something, it's learning. I can imagine the wealth of knowledge and the wealth of generation and creation it has. So that's on the workplace front. So good to have working knowledge. So that's what we are busy doing. Evangelizing on getting workers equipped. At the community front, we are also concerned. So I think we are partnering with various agencies, from IMDA to SG Digital Office, to get our seniors and people in the community to be aware that there's this generative AI going around, and many of us are busy on our phones most of the time. I mean, everyone, and we look around, either on socials or even just basically mindlessly looking at scrolls and stuff like that. So I think very, very important, and not just confined to the not so young, but also our students and our younger populace. I think important to, like what you mentioned earlier, to fact check and to be able to be astute and have at least know where to go to make sure that whatever they see and don't spread, don't add to the fake news, and don't spread them, and be careful. I think this is a very, very important message, because even as we talk about deepfakes, even as we talk about Gen AI, even as we are discussing this very, very important topic, there are still people being scammed for a variety of reasons, and sometimes it's beyond Gen AI. It may be just a personal disposition or gullibility, or basically the psychology of how we operate, and therefore affects many people. So I thought important for us to be extra mindful, both at the community and the workplaces, in this space of Gen AI.
Yeah, for sure. And with the interaction of individuals with Gen AI, there's so much to take note of, and so much to really just be very careful. And as we round up the topic of, can Gen AI be trusted, really so many cautionary notes to take note of, for the audience that we have today. Now, very quickly, we will now move on to the next segment, which actually Patrick, at the end of what he mentioned just now, has alluded to, which is data protection and privacy issues with Gen AI. Now, we talk a lot about interactions with Gen AI directly, the information that we receive, but one of the things that sometimes it just kind of not goes through our mind as much is, what input do we give when we interact with Gen AI? If Gen AI or via some tools are asking us for our own information, for our private data, and we could be gullible sometimes and we end up giving it, what are some of the risks that Gen AI poses in this realm? So I've been looking at Pigeonhole because, you know, all you wonderful audience folks have been giving us great questions. The most popular question as it stands now, I'm going to, you know, just pop into that and I'll throw it to YT actually to look at it, which is what if AI is misused by someone to duplicate one's personal info and cheat, scam, fraud, etc., because there could be so many. How can the law be used to tackle this? YT, what's your experience when it comes to this kind of data protection and privacy issues?
At the outset, what I want to mention is I have this fond saying, quote of mine, do not beware, be aware. There's no point in just being scared, right? Because you end up paranoid, you end up suspecting everything and everyone. The best defense that we have is to be aware. Now, Bozy, let me ask you a question. How do you verify or counter-check any piece of news that you get?
I go to my best friend, Google.
And you know that Google, again, the recent, I think today or yesterday, Google tells you what you want to hear. It's no longer what you want. So there are two questions. Will Donald Trump make a good president? Will Kamala Harris make a good president? It'll give you answers that you are seeking based upon your search history. And that starts skewering things in a different direction. The second fear, or the second fear that people should have is if there is no information, I love this saying, it's not mine, so somebody else's quote. If there's no information, there is conspiracy. And that is always the most juiciest gossip that you can ever hear. Hey, is my neighbor having an affair? That's more interesting than saying, okay, what's the latest policy giving me in terms of freebies, right? So it all depends upon how we target. So I'd like to share a story, from one of my clients who asked me this question on data protection. Someone came to his house, knocked the door or rang the bell, as it may be, and said, I'm the election officer who's come to do a census on number of members in your house. Now, anybody, then he said, the house owner said, how do I know you're from the election commissioner? So he pulled out a card. Now, I can take you to the mama shop near my neighborhood and I can make a card, I can laminate it and it can look identical. Then you can show all kinds of documents, but everything can be forged, everything can be recreated. That's exactly talking about duplicating people's info and cheating and scamming people. Your only option is, you know that there is a genuine number at the election office, you call them up, you ask them to cross-check. That's one way of doing it. I once reported a scam, right? A person, Along was asking me, do you want a loan? And he got really aggressive. So I reported to the cops. That's the beauty of Singapore. 2 hours later, the cop called me back. My first question to the cop, after he introduced himself, he said, I'm Inspector Tan IO from Tanglin Division, So I said, how do I know you are not a scammer? So his answer was, please go up to the website where you've lodged your complaint. You see the Tanglin Division there. My name is written there. And the number that you've received that you're calling me from is listed there. So that's the only thing you can do. There are layers and layers of care that you must take care. I mean, ever since people started hoarding money, you've got a safe, you keep the safe inside a cupboard, you lock the cupboard, you lock the bedroom, and then you lock your house, and then you put an iron gate in front of it, and then you keep 3 dogs. It's the same with data. The problem is cash or money is tangible. It's easy for me to protect it. People don't realize that data, which is intangible, hurts you when you don't, and you don't even know where it's coming from. It's like fighting an unseen enemy. And so long as it's intangible, they will be abused. And you keep hearing about it. I mean, I feel really sad when I hear, $385 million lost to scammers in the first half of 2024 in Singapore. I didn't know that there were so many people, so much money. I mean, if you can get back all the money from the scammers, I don't even need CDC vouchers. I just distribute this ransom money. So yeah, you got to take care. These are the steps. You ask yourself, how can I cross-check this news? It's additional work, yes, but you must go to the source. People will fake you. People will scam you. People will fish for your information. That's spelled with a PH. They will hold you to ransom with malware. You just got to be on guard. And the world is, AI is not just automating, augmenting, and accelerating your work. It is also automating, augmenting, and accelerating the malicious actors work. So it's make jobs easier for them. And that's where we not only have to be careful, but we have to take, I mean, I call it the 1SB, 2SF, 1 step back, 2 steps forward. Don't chong into everything else and say, I'm going to do this. Somebody comes and says, give me your password. You just give your password thinking. That's social engineering, right? Quite different from prompt engineering. Yeah. So I think learn, be aware. This is something that's going to last everybody's lifetime and beyond. Just a quick one before you move on to the next speaker. We've been Singapore has been so good in educating people about scams and being careful of scams. If you notice these days, people no longer call you from +65 number. You're getting a straight 8-digit number, and that's a scammer at the other end. We are so good that even educated scammers don't add +65. And that's going to happen. People are going to take advantage. Yeah.
And we really have to be very careful and don't jump on the bandwagon of things just because, something looks legit, seems like, it would be benefiting you a lot. Once again, if it's too good to be true, it's something to really take care of. And here's where I also...
Sorry, I just saw this question again, right? I realized I haven't addressed it and you asked me this question. What if AI is misused by someone to duplicate one's personal info and cheat, scam, fraud, etc.? And how can the law be used to tackle this? In cybersecurity, we have a saying, 10% is technology, 90% is the human error. It's the same thing. Law is 10% or even 1%. Law cannot on its own, what they call a suo motu, take an action against all these. Somebody has to go and bring an action against it. And half the time we say, must go to court. Oh, too much problem. I don't want to go. So half the cases will fall through. Again, I wind up by saying don't beware, be aware and learn and protect yourself. That is your safest. That should answer your
Thank you.
question.
Thanks, YT, for answering the question. So actually on that note, what is the role of the law here? Is the law always playing catch up? Because, the technology is going on so quickly, and the law is not something that within a day we can come up with a new legislation or whatsoever. It takes, a lot of people putting on their thinking hats and coming together, debating a bill, getting a piece of legislation up. Now, in Singapore, we have recently, the Singapore Personal Data Protection Commission has developed a model AI governance framework that was just released. And here's where, I turn the camera now to Stanley to perhaps let us know a little bit more about your thoughts on whether this framework that has just been released, what sort of impact, can it have in protecting our society from cyber criminals and also, all these issues and risks from Gen AI?
Yeah, thank you, Bozy. I think the enactment of codes of practice, guidance, and frameworks is, I think, a recognition by the government that not all laws and rules need to be given the force of statute. You want to also encourage prudence, good practice, and safeguards. So in the context of what YT was explaining, which is absolutely relevant, and how do you actually deal with personal data? The real interesting issue of data is it's valuable, but yet it's difficult to protect as an IP right per se. But you have to fall back on the personal data protection regime. So your modern intellectual property lawyer needs to know quite a lot about data protection as well as cybersecurity. But at the heart of it, what he's trying to do with his clients is actually to foster a good practice and a culture of accountability, accuracy, and also cyber hygiene. So if I can just call up some slides, which I prepared, you will see there is a lot of details that can potentially constitute personal data. So if someone misappropriates that, then the question is, how did he come about obtaining this information? Is it through a phishing email, or is it through a business email compromise, or somehow maybe his details may have been scraped or trawled by a threat actor? So all these causes can give rise to different remedies under different legislations, including the Computer Misuse Act, including the Personal Data Protection Act. You can accuse or make an allegation that an organization may not have reasonable security arrangements to safeguard data that it has collected. That's why it's found wanting when it disappears. So that creates a different remedies that are available. If I can move to the next slide. You see that, you know, the whole issue of AI coming into the space of cybersecurity tells us one thing, that the basic foundations of sound, prudent practice and cyber hygiene would also safeguard us against the use of artificial intelligence as a means to compromise data. So phishing attacks are very rampant. You see that the CSA, our cybersecurity agency, is very active in giving guidance as to what constitutes phishing. And if you look at other legislation, including our Cybersecurity Act, Computer Misuse Act, these are all statutes that you can look back on to basically deal with any compromises to your data that can arise through this compromise. In terms of the guidance on AI governance, if I can move to the next slide, you will see that model frameworks have been devised. Also very sector-specific guidelines, like in healthcare, for example. Why is that? Because the definition of personal data is also changing with the development of genomics, gene testing, genomic testing. Your definition of personal data as meaning biographical information that's capable of identifying an individual may extend to his DNA in the future, may extend to other character traits, for example. And that also may form part of this whole new world of data protection that he also needs to be protected against in terms of exfiltration and the like. Now, if we can move to the next slide, when talking about the model AI governance framework for generative AI, what we're trying to do and foster is actually an environment of accountability and data management and data safeguarding that's based on trust and assurance. So it puts the onus back on industry. And if you can look at the next slide, in fact, the next two slides will show a trusted AI ecosystem that deals with ensuring data quality, enhancing transparency, wrapped around a very robust means of incident reporting, and also augmented, supplemented by testing and assurances, so that ultimately organizations also learn to look after the data that they are charged with safeguarding. So, you know, in a sense, I do see the merit of this, because you're looking at a combination of hard and soft solutions, if you like. If someone is silly enough to compromise a computer system, infiltrate without authorization, and cause the denial of service or some other scourge, obviously there are remedies under the Computer Misuse Act. But in the main, when safeguarding your own data, organizations also need to put themselves through cyber hygiene exercise. Your employees need to be educated all the time. You know, there's no limit to education of the employees, and it's also a part of cyber resilience that also gives rise to managing compromises in a artificial intelligence environment as well. And AI, as YT said, it can be used as the attacker's best tool, but it's also becoming the defender's best tool. So the very tool that is used to launch a malware package, for example, after discerning a vulnerability that it can exploit, it's also the very same tool that can help the organization detect when it actually surfaces and how to deal with it. So it's fascinating, but you know, the whole idea of a model AI governance framework is to vest trust and assurance and responsibility.
Yeah, if I may add to what augment what Stanley shared, I think in the community as well in the workplace, yes, I thought a few important things to look out for. I also see some of the questions that were fleshed out in the pigeonhole, concerns about scams, impersonation, fraud, forgery. So I think Stanley has given us quite a good overview of some of the existing laws, from personal data protection laws, as Yen Thaw mentioned as well, including Computer Misuse Act, and quite a number of pieces of legislation that have come up in the last 3 to 4 years to combat online falsehoods, etc. And they have come to good use now because of this advent of Gen AI. But overarching all this is still our penal laws, as in our penal code. So I know there were some questions on what if I'm cheated, and fraud, forgery. So there are provisions in the penal code. So if any of our seniors or any of you out there in the community who are scammed or cheated, or whether there's forgery for purposes of cheating, there's some impersonation of public servant, etc., please file a police report. I think the law enforcement authorities are there, over and above some of these civil remedies and existing laws, or in particularly addressed into this virtual space. So there are still penal laws to rely on. So that's important. And for those of you in the community that have been unfortunately victims of some of these cases, and at the same time in the workplaces as well. So I think Stanley alluded to the model law as well as I think this is a call out to employers as well as employees out there in the workplaces. I think employers with advent of Gen AI, particularly in some of these large organizations where they have their own Gen AI systems, and also they are tapping on this very, very public, whether it's ChatGPT or even Copilot, which is a very public system, to be extra careful, that to have guidelines. I think that's one good thing, to have some form of guidelines in the use of Gen AI for their companies and organizations. I think that's one. And at the same time, also equip their workers and their workforce with the knowledge to, how not to inadvertently leak company data and information. Because there have been cases where personally we have encountered where workers actually, they want to do a good job, they want to do a good presentation, they want to generate a nice data sheet, do some data analytics, pump tons of materials, company materials and information, including personal data of workers and employees, into ChatGPT systems or such Gen AI systems to generate charts, to generate flow charts, generate data analytics. And lo and behold, they did not realize, yes, it's free, but they did not realize that actually by pumping that in, what happens is that somewhere down the road, when someone does a research or asks certain right questions through prompt engineering on a particular company, then some of these data may appear again because it's in the public domain. So I thought important, because not every organization has its own directives and policies on use of Gen AI systems, and particularly, for example, startups, micro SMEs, or even SMEs who may be too busy the day-to-day operations, may not have the capacity or the bandwidth to do such, to start thinking about it and to rely on some of the materials that are available publicly, particularly in Singapore, as we are propounding this and we are evangelizing on providing a safe and working environment for this, so that you don't breach some of the laws inadvertently, particularly employees. So we hope employees watch your own backs as well, and companies to help and educate your workers in that journey. Very, very important, because we are very worried, because many of these systems are free of charge and free to use anytime, anywhere. And the last we hope not to see is some of these company very sensitive information being leaked out to the public domain to inputting into the Gen AI system. So be extra careful. Many of you I know use Gen AI and some of these ChatGPT to create travel itineraries, to get reviews of certain restaurants and companies and stuff like that. So you will see some of the information that's coming out is trawled actually from many of the public domains and the reviews that people input. So be extra careful and just watch as you use many of these very, very useful systems.
For what it's worth, Patrick, I don't know if everyone is getting it, but now you've got Search GPT. So your Chat GPT goes in. I don't know if it's available in the free version, but Search GPT is where it's going to look through the entire internet and give you sources of where it's received its information from. So whether good or bad,
well, we shall see.
you know, with technology, so many things are made accessible, right? That's also part of the point, you know, so that more people can be exposed to it, etc. And it comes with these risks of scams, cheating, fraud, etc. We now have, you know, the importance of putting data protection at the forefront when we deal with these kinds of new technology. Now, data protection, and I appreciate how our speakers have, you know, talked about both in private capacities as well as in the community and in the corporate setting. I now want to turn the lens to our third topic, the last topic for today, which is really on intellectual property rights and fights, issues with Gen AI, because data protection is not just in, you know, the grand scheme of things and your private data, but for those creatives out there and even, you know, also our scientists and folks alike who are creating things from our brain, our human brains, how do we protect, you know, our copyright on these? I just, you know, for illustration purposes, go into a bit of a potential scenario so that the panelists can discuss. Let's say I'm a famous stand-up comedian. Second half is true, still working on trying to be famous, really. And, you know, as stand-up comedians, what we have to do is to write geeks and our material, come up with something that's entertaining, that's, you know, relatable, etc., etc. But we are humans too. And what if I one day just become very lazy and say, ChatGPT, you know, let's put your humor level to a test. How about you write something with a, you know, good prompt, and if it does turn out that ChatGPT is funnier than I am, which I would be a little bit sad, but also, wow, the efficiency of it, it comes in like a wrecking ball, and within minutes it comes up with, you know, a good material that I can then perhaps just do a little bit of tweaks here and there and present it in front of, you know, a crowd at a bar on a Friday night, right? Who owns the copyright to that, right? Because ChatGPT might have written it for me. I have now maybe added some salt and sugar and spice and performed it live, right? With hopefully my own style of humor and some, you know, help from ChatGPT. Where does the copyright, you know, lie? And who can claim copyright to something like this? And so Stanley, as an IP lawyer, this question is really for you. If subsequently I really become famous because my performance then get posted online, TikTok, YouTube, what have you, you know, what are some of the legal and ethical issues that actually I may be facing, or, you know, the creatives out there may be facing when using Gen AI tools to assist in the production of our creative pieces?
That's a great question, and it does, you know, it's kept us thinking about this problem from the inception of generative AI, which, if you think about it, is just 2 years ago.
The anniversary is going on now.
The anniversary is going on now. So, you know, you can just see how rampant this has become. And I like the way, Bozy, you mentioned about adding sugar and spice to whatever you get from the Gen AI output. And that, I think, is the secret sauce. The secret sauce actually is to make sure that, you know, whilst you can rely on a generative AI tool to give you some inspiration or some ideas, ultimately the way the joke carries, if you're a stand-up comedian, comes down to how much you can put of your own personality in the rendering and the performance. And so that's why I would like to see in that scenario that ultimately you're still ultimately an author of the content you produce, but with the assistance of Gen AI. So that's one level of creative paradigm, which I think I have no hesitation in saying, look, obviously the author must be you. Now, you have to draw a distinction between those who just rely on nothing but AI-created autonomous product that does not have any human input whatsoever. And in that situation, it's very difficult to attribute copyright status, because, I mean, we can just show my slides just for illustration, but they're based on real cases. You do need, next slide, please. You do need human authorship as the basis for corporate protection. So if you don't have a human author that lies at the very heart of the creation process, you're not going to be able to say that AI by itself will qualify for copyright protection because it's non-human. And just as a way to put paid to the whole idea of the importance of human authorship. You know, if you look at the case Asia Pacific Publishing and Pioneers and Leaders, it's a case I argued before the Court of Appeal. You measure the duration of the work by reference to the age of the author. If you have a generative AI or ChatGPT that has no age, is evergreen, lives forever, you cannot have perpetual copyright. It just goes against the whole scheme of the statute. So that's one interesting observation to make. Next slide. I think looking at the role played by AI generated content as an assist to human input, I think is firmly within contemplation that you can actually get copyright protection. And I would always encourage artists to do so. Now, this argument will fail in due course because I have no doubt that with further iterations of even like ChatGPT, you're going to have more and more autonomous independence that the work is capable of doing. In fact, the work may even be able to create something in your voice, having maybe seen your past performances, and can actually generate a set of jokes on its own. And that may be the situation where it would be difficult then to say that you created it. So if you want to enforce copyright, it will come down to proof on how much authorship you can show. In other words, your input versus the generative AI's input. So that is the nub of studies that have been undertaken. The next slide, please. You will see studies created by the Academy of Law. There's also the provision of text and data mining, where in some limited way, researchers and users can make use of a means of harvesting and scraping data to try and produce another product that can give rise to an AI-generated work. And the question then is, are you going to get into trouble for doing that kind of data mining? The answer is no, if you stick within the requirements of the Copyright Act in Section 243 and 244. And that's very technical, but let me just say this, that it has to be a lawful use. So you can't just go to a website and help yourself to data. I mean, to answer some of the points made about how you scrape reviews and so on. If the nature of the website, in terms of its terms and conditions, prevents or forbids any unauthorized access or erects a paywall, for example, the circumvention of that paywall to get hold of that data is itself going to mean it's not a lawful access, which means you can't take advantage of the exception. So the exceptions are also not as broad as people think that they are. In the copyright conversation, there's also reference to fair use, and maybe the next slide you will see reference to fair use, and that is another interesting dimension where people are saying, look, whatever it is, even though I put so much information into an LLM, what comes out of it, whilst it may give you some idea that it's based on information that we put in, ultimately the output is so transformed that the initial copying of the original work should constitute a fair use under the law. And you will see then a lot of interesting illustrations in the case law on what constitutes a fair use, and it's a fact-specific inquiry. If you look at the next slide, and you will see, and the next slide, you see a reference to prints, for example, in the Andy Warhol Foundation case. And there was a rendering of photographs that was based on paintings that depicted the prints in this guise. And the defendant actually wanted to rely on the fact that, look, there is a fair use defense that will allow me to make reference to this. But guess what? The Supreme Court actually said, no, you're basically, taking advantage of the work and reproducing. You're not entitled to rely on the fair use defense. So it's multifactorial. There are a lot of considerations that determine what is the extent of permissible use that you can apply in relation to relying on a copyright defense. So it is a very complicated conversation. But at the end of the day, if I can move to the next slide, dealing with New York Times and OpenAI, it's not stopped different stakeholders like journalists from and newspapers from taking OpenAI to litigation, because what they feel is that we have all this amount of data and text that you basically just train into a large language module. And then from there, you can actually generate all sorts of news articles. So how are you going to monitor that? I think personally, if I was advising, I would probably say, look, you really need to watermark your products, because one thing about watermarking, especially for the photos cases where you watermark the photograph, when the photograph is reproduced, or some version of it is reproduced in the output, the watermark appears, and that to me is proof that there was obviously a copying in the process. So if you use technology, you can also use technology to help you police your copyright, and it's just a question of making sure that everybody knows it, like the AI model framework, and it becomes pervasive and it'll be used more extensively. But I think with watermarking, there's a very potent tool to safeguard the integrity of works. If you're truly paranoid about protection, the only thing that you should also consider is not using large language modules that are accessible to the whole world. You may want to create your own LLM. It will take time, but it won't be wasted effort, because it would just confine within an organization all that it considers proprietary and only for its own employees and customers. And that may also be a solution. So I think there are a lot of different permutations on what we can do to deal with the IP risk. Of course, I can say a lot more about it, and we can spend another seminar on just intellectual property, which I'll be happy to do at some point. But I think maybe the answer will suffice for now.
Thank you, Stanley. Thank you for the very comprehensive answer.
Thank you.
So we've come from the perspective of content creators, right? Folks who, put their minds together with the help of GPT sometimes to create something call their own. Now, what about the audience, right? How can we identify if something was created by the GPT? One of the questions that have come in through the pigeonhole is actually, what are the telltale signs that a write-up is created using Gen AI? Here's where I'm going to invite YT, who has a special talent, for all of you who don't know, who can identify if something is written by Gen AI, by ChatGPT. And so YT, would you share perhaps your little secret with us on how you do it?
So, Bozy, let me preface that with your original comment about comedy, right? ChatGPT is not going to take the job away from you. ChatGPT's comedy sucks big time. You ask ChatGPT, tell me a joke that's going to start off with, why did the chicken cross the road? Then I tried the next one, tell me a joke in Singapore context. Why did the chicken cross the road in Orchard? I mean, it goes beyond laughing, right? It's slightly better when it comes to writing poetry, but it uses the standard meters and it rhymes like a 5-year-old trying to, come up with a nursery rhyme and stuff like that. The language of ChatGPT is rather unique. So if you do not give it any instructions, right, in your prompt, it's going to come up with a culmination of all its data that it's been trained on, which is predominantly Wikipedia, predominantly open sources of publications, and predominantly American. So the style is quite American. And ChatGPT has few words it just loves to use in the realm of. And when I see these words, I immediately know, oh, this person has used ChatGPT. It also loves words like, it is critical to note that, it is vital that, it's got the superlatives that it uses. It really amplifies. So in the workshop, I hope to be able to share with you how to tell ChatGPT to shut up and give me output, which, to complement what Stanley says, makes it you. Makes it you. You definitely can do that. Just don't be lazy. Again, the original statement, if you remember, ChatGPT is not your substitute, it's your tool. So whenever I feel like writing poetry, I give it an idea of what I want, then ChatGPT comes out with typical rubbish, and then I keep asking, change this, because I don't like this, but I don't like that word. And it has this whole fantasy type of narrating things, prince and princesses and lightsabers and what is this. So yeah, it's very telltale ChatGPT. I will share more. I will share more.
Okay, we're getting into there soon, the workshop session. But just before that, I now want to turn the limelight on to Patrick. You know, with all these use of ChatGPT and the content that it's being created, how are our freelancers, our creatives being protected? You know, is there anything that the legislation or any sort of guardrails that we can have to make sure that, hey, their work is still, you know, being appreciated, protected in its own rights, and not overtaken by the various realms of ChatGPT prompts that can generate a poem or whatsoever that will one day overtake it? Because I think the human brain and creativity should still be valued in some way or another.
Yeah, that's right. So we have in NTUC, we set up a freelance and self-employed team, and now we have set up the VICPA, looking at assisting many of our freelancers in the creative space. So what we've done in the past couple of years, besides floating some of the concerns and issues that they have, and we've just sort of like in a partnership with IPOS, just recently at the IPOS week, so that we can do more to help them. Many of them are freelancers in the creative space. They could be professional photographers, script writers, audiovisual, experts and freelancers. So we are particularly concerned in this space. Of course, some of the major issues they face are more whether they get paid, whether they are paid late, whether they are eventually paid. I mean, that's the bread and butter stuff. But also increasingly more intellectual property issues, and especially when sometimes they take certain photos, they created certain form of art that's been used incessantly by anyone else except being acknowledged and being given consent to. And so that they face this variety of issues. And so what we have done in the labor movement together with VICPA and our freelance team is to as part of this LawWorks, and in fact today's LawWorks legal primers, particularly, I know many of our VICPA members are tuning in, and many of our creative freelancers are tuning in. Essentially, we have various channels where we want to assist each and every one of you. That's why we have a partnership with IPOS. And now I know IPOS runs free IP legal clinics as well, to provide you with a brief consultation if you face some of these IP issues. Of course, we also conduct regular legal primers, and of course pocket series, and of course this partnership we had also with Pro Bono SG, and then Advocate for the Arts, and a nice book, both in hard copy and you can get it in soft copy as well online, where you can equip yourself with some of the basic things to look out for whenever you create content, pictures, or take pictures, or you discover some breaches. So don't panic. There are resources out there. I thought make full use of those resources. Of course, the idea is to prevent or safeguard yourself before there's a breach. But if you do encounter some of these breaches, to be able to know the various channels to go to. And so for those who have just started out as freelancers in this creative space, join our legal primers. Equip yourself with some of the pocket series that we have for each and every one of you. These are all materials that you can download them. We have put them both on our NTUC as well as our Pro Bono SG web pages. So access all these to give you a very basic understanding so that you don't get too lost, or you know how to prevent and safeguard yourselves. So I think these are some of the plethora of things that we are doing the past many years. But more importantly, we've set up VICPA. So hope all of you will be part of this so that we collectively can know what are the concerns you face on the ground, and we can surface them. And then we have been partnering with various agencies, including with IPOS and MinLaw and even Personal Data Protection Commission. I remembered very, very, very vividly many years back when the Personal Data Protection Act was being rolled out and passed in Parliament, and there were a lot of concerns with, for example, photographers. Can we now take pictures yeah, in private events. So there was a big furor, So we actually band everyone together and had a dialogue session with Personal Data Protection Commission, of course under IMDA, as well as MinLaw. And then lo and behold, immediately after that, we took because of this collective sharing and feedback session, we actually wrote out some practitioners guidelines and so that now our professional photographers can now take wedding photos, do wedding shoots in hotels, etc. But just in fact for any private event, but by displaying and not having to go to every single participant and attendee to get a consent. Just displaying some notice to say that if you're not comfortable with your pictures being used, collected, used or disclosed, then let the organizers know. So I think these are ways that we can combat or overcome some of these issues. So it's therefore important for all freelancers, in particular, to band together either through VICPA or through any other associations that we may have formed to look after your interests and welfare.
If I may steal a second, seek your indulgence in allowing me to steal your job for a 30-second, I would ask Stanley a question. So Stanley, in the law of crimes, we say that you're innocent till proven guilty, right? Can I say that in generating content using AI, I'm the owner until proven otherwise?
I think, no, I think the first question is, are you the author?
Yes. So I've created something.
Yes. So you've created something. The question then is, you can assert authorship because we don't have a registration system in Singapore. But whether that is tested in court would depend on what if say you want to sue on your copyright later on, the defendant may say, well, I put you the strict proof of authorship. So you have to show us how much you actually inputted and were responsible for the creation, which is why the sugar and spice point of Bozy is very important, because the minute you say that, look, I took inspiration, but ultimately I created the expression, you're justifying the authorship versus a wholesale reliance on the autonomous nature of Gen AI creation, no matter how bad. I mean, copyright law doesn't differentiate between quality as long as it's original, no matter how heinous, it can attract protection. But it's still your personal input that's important. So I would track that first of all. Yeah. So, but if you assert authorship and it's not challenged by the other side, well, then the court will take that as the presumption of authorship.
Thanks.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah, of course.
I hope so. Yeah, because that's a very good question, because again, it shows on the human input as opposed to the generative AI input in creating the work. And just a segue to what Patrick was saying, our Copyright Act actually has been amended to enhance the protection of rights for our freelancers and our authors per se. I mean, you are the first, owners of copyright, and even in a commission context, you are still the first owners, unless by contract that's displaced, but you have to actively insist on that. And you can also insist that your name as the author accompanies the work of whatever you produce, whether it's artwork or text. So there's also a positive right of attribution of authorship now. So this should give our gig workers a lot of encouragement that actually the law actually is looking out for your creative interests. That's the message, I think. Yeah.
Now, on that note, it's very heartening to know that the law is not just there to punish, but it's also there to protect, right? And with that, we are coming to the end of the panel section. We thank everyone for your questions on Pigeonhole. We managed to touch on a couple of them during the webinar itself, but unfortunately we've run out of time because this topic is just so fascinating and everyone's got much wonderful input. So what we're going to do now is actually to move on to the next portion of today's session, where YT will take us through a hands-on experiential session on Gen AI. Now, at the end of this hands-on session, a survey form will pop up on your screen for your completion. We appreciate your comments, and it would be used for further webinars in the future. Now, lastly, After today's fascinating sharing from our panelists, and if you find that you're facing any issues, if you're an NTUC member and you're keen to register for any of the legal clinic sessions, you may write in to lawworks@ntuc.org.sg. If you are a non-NTUC member, do consider to register as an NTUC member, or you can approach Pro Bono SG at help@probono.sg. I think we'll put both of these addresses in the chat function as well. And also, if you're interested in finding out or learning more about this area, educating yourself on it or your loved ones, you can also check out 2 links in the chat function that's just been put in for some of the courses that are available out there. There's nothing better than educating yourself and maybe even helping to tell your loved ones about, the risks of Gen AI, as well as the ways that you can use it to empower yourself. So before we hand it over to YT, we would like to express our heartiest gratitude to Stanley and Patrick for spending, their evening with us and for sharing knowledge and experiences. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. It's
Yeah,
been a
thanks.
pleasure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now go into the hands-on session.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so for those of us who are joining the hands-on session, please make sure that you have a laptop or a tablet so that you can join and experience what YT will take us through.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using the same screen. So that a lot of, and you will see a repeat of, a mirror of a mirror, which is going to appear. Okay. So, right, this is what we are going to look at. I need to hide my ugly mug. Okay. So this we are going to move really, really fast on this now. And for those of you who look at some of the slides and you feel you want to take a screenshot, please go ahead and take it. And Bozy, if I may request you to just keep an eye on the chat. If anyone says, hey, I want to take a slide of the previous one, just let me know. Okay. So I'm going to go through some of these slides really, really quickly. And this is going to be a blitzkrieg kind of slides that you're going to see. So, okay, this is a bit about me. And these slides are actually extracts from a book that I had written this year called Artificial Intelligence to 2024. It contains 111 terms and explanations and a practical case study on how to apply AI as a pilot project within your organization. So it's just there. Content created over a period of time. Yeah, not obligated to buy the book. Okay, so these are just some certifications and testimonials. So artificial intelligence covers a lot of subjects. I briefly touched upon it being machine learning, and then within machine learning, deep learning. Then there are applications such as virtual agents, natural language processing, computer vision, physical AI, and expert systems. So in one of the questions on Pigeonhole itself, there were some questions asked about, can I use chatbot? What about a paid chatbot? Let me see if I can try and answer some of them, or if maybe Bozy will just, send me through an inquisition and ask me the questions and I try to answer them. Right. This is a 2-minute video that I wanted to share with you. I'm not sure if you can hear, but just hang on. Sorry. Okay, let me just bring that back. There's something on the chat, right? Okay. Okay, hopefully you can hear this.
How about this? I mean, computer code, that's just a type of language. So you can say, and this is a real example that I tried, GPT, find me a security vulnerability then write some code to
I've,
exploit it.
I've clipped a lot
So
of this.
I
It's a
posted
long
in,
video, but I've just
some
clipped
code.
for
This
the
is from
relevant
like
parts.
a mail server, and I said, please find any exploits and describe any vulnerabilities in the following code, then write a script to exploit them, and in around 10 seconds, that was the
So
code.
it
to
can write
exploit it.
code for you.
So while it is not yet the case that you can ask an AI to hack a Wi-Fi router, you can see in the double exponential, whether it's 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, at some soon point, it becomes easy to turn all of the physical hardware that's already out there into kind of the ultimate surveillance.
No, and constrain it. Now, many of you are aware of the fact that
This is very interesting.
images can, the new AI can actually copy your voice, right? You can get someone's voice, Obama and Putin, people have seen those videos. What they may not know is it only takes 3 seconds of your voice to reconstruct it. So here's a demo of the first 3 seconds are of a real person speaking, even though she sounds a little bit metallic. The rest is just what the computer automatically generated her
Of
saying.
people are,
Real.
in 9 cases out of 10,
Synthetic.
mere spectacle reflections of the actuality of things. But they are impressions of something different and more.
Here's another one with piano. The first 3 seconds are real piano, fake. Indistinguishable, right? So the first 3 seconds are real piano, the rest is just automatically generating.
Now, one of the things I want to say is, as we saw these first demos, we sat and thought, like, how is this going to be used? We're like, oh, you know what would be terrifying is if someone were to call up, your son or your daughter, and get a
Okay,
couple
so the rest
seconds,
of it
"Hey,
goes
oh, I'm
into,
sorry,
the various problems caused by AI and, but you can see in 3 seconds, it just picks up 3 seconds and it generates the rest. Some of you asked the question, right? What if it fakes? Yep, it's happening. Okay. Now we've seen the definition of computer science. Normally I take all of the people, my clients and students, as to what artificial intelligence basically is. So if you want to know what ChatGPT or generative AI is your umbrella term. Machine learning is a subset. Deep learning is the subset of machine learning using neural networks. Generative AI is created out of these neural networks using natural language processing, which uses large language models, and GPT is born out of it. So this uses different kinds of learning. So as Stanley had mentioned, there are different types. You have GANs, you have Bayes, you have transformer models, autoregressive, diffusion models, neural style transfer, reinforcement based. So we are using GPT, which is your transformer model, not your Optimus Prime, but it's the same thing. It is just generative pre-trained transformer. Gemini uses mixture of experts architecture, and Facebook uses Roberta. Baidu also uses Ernie. Now, these are just different types. In this session, we are using GPT. Now, I just want to skip all of this. It goes into details. There's something called as attention mechanism. When you run the program through run your questions or input through the neural network, right? It seeks attention for those, like I said, if you just look at it, it's something like a word cloud, So whatever are the biggest words, ChatGPT starts picking them up and starts auto-generating. So in a way, you can look at ChatGPT as autocorrect on steroids and steroids and steroids, both anabolic and diabolic and all those kind of steroids, right? Now, essentially, you collect. There's data collection, then there's a training, there's data pre-processing. Use your model, train it, evaluate and refine, and it generates the new data. That's how it works. So, in really simple terms, you ask me to simplify it. You take a large language model, you put it through machine learning and deep learning, it gives it a scoring function, and whatever high score comes, that's your GPT. That's as simple as that, right? So, AI can generate a lot of capabilities. It can be used to automate, augment, and accelerate work. It's a substitute, not a tool. I can't repeat this enough. Garbage in, garbage out. Or in Singlish, rubbish in, rubbish out. So it has a lot of great uses. Now, knowledge is dead because of Gen AI. Everybody is an expert. So how? So you learn prompt engineering, practice of designing, refining, structuring prompts to get the most useful and accurate responses. Okay. So here's my cheat sheet. First, you give it a role whenever you're drafting a prompt. Then specify what outcome you are expecting, whether it's a joke or a poem or script for a movie. Accuracy or appropriateness, you want to build that in. Ask it to give resources so that we prevent the so-called hallucination and other problems. And then what kind of response you want. Okay, you can change your response to be you. Now, always ensure when you are using any form of AI, Do not put in your proprietary data. In a way, I think Stanley alluded to this. You create your own large language model, but you can also create what is called synthetic data. Now, these are the 4 steps, which in one screenshot, all of them are contained within here. Now, the key thing is, there's one more question, right? When you finish your prompts, you don't hit enter button or hit the send button or the, that paper airplane. You ask ChatGPT, do you understand me? Do you have any questions before you give me a better answer? Now, this is basically because you don't know what you don't know, right? And ChatGPT begins asking you the kind of questions where you realize, hey, I didn't think about this. Now that is where your output becomes more and more and more you. Okay, you can also try reverse prompt engineering. I want you to create a prompt for me about how you can buy a new car in Singapore, right? And it creates, and you'd be surprised at the size of the prompt. So do not be aware. They can be scamming, phishing, impersonation, fake news, and hacking. These are the things that people are using ChatGPT for. In fact, in a study by anti-hacking website, they spoke about hacking into passwords. What used to take in a 12-character mixture of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols used to take 36,000 years is now being done in 36 minutes, especially using what is called as ChatGPT hardware. Right. So there's something called Copilot as well. Copilot also uses GPT, right? It is, I don't want to go into the history of ChatGPT, but there is a Microsoft link in both Copilot and GPT. So ask me later and I'll share that with you. And this is a Microsoft way of the chat, of a prompt, of creating a prompt. I have a goal, have a context, have expectations, and the source. All right. So there are many other things. There are lots of places where I can use ChatGPT, like marketing and sales, operation, IT engineering, risk and legal, HR, utility and employee, drafting and legal, reviewing legal documents. So this is the case where the US lawyer had filed and it came up with the hallucinated cases. So what makes you unique? Your question and responses are yours. Extraction of information is yours. How you use that information is yours. Customization is yours. Give it samples of your writing style and say, hey, ChatGPT, create or model, create whatever output that you're going to answer it using the same style as the previous one. Okay, you can also change the settings within ChatGPT. All right, so generative AI for lawyers. I believe there are some lawyers in the audience as well. So you may just consider this. What can you use it for? Documents, contracts, memos, correspondence, content generation, client interaction and support, even training and development, automating routine tasks. You can also use it for research and case analysis, sample clauses, creating checklists, or simplifying legal language. I mean, if someone comes and tells you ignorantia juris non excusat, you're running for the dictionary. Basically, it means ignorance of law is no excuse. Or someone comes and tell you, sat sapienti, which basically mean words to the wise, right? So ChatGPT can simplify all of these for you. And sat sapienti, word to the wise, re-verify. So this is, again, what Bozy had covered earlier. How do I protect myself? So re-verify. Check against current laws and regulations if you're a lawyer using it. Compliance with data protection laws, ethics, morals, and bias. This I cannot stress enough again. Use critical thinking. So I have created another model called Quests on critical thinking, and apply your experience on AI. Okay. Right. So that is how you use Gen AI for lawyers. I want to quickly, let's just skip the different laws that applies, what you can do, because now we are supposed to be a workshop, right? So I want you all to,
This filter may look harmless, but if this technology
we
is
skip
given
this.
and
So
being used for
one
malicious
is
cause,
real.
could
I think the
be
old guy is
worst
real,
nightmare for
and the other is
all
created by
parents.
AI.
Now watch this
which
video to get what I'm
is
trying to
his
say.
younger version, right? Okay. So why AI ethics? Because you need to maintain societal trust. Technology enhances human values. You need to respect human rights, promote fairness, and promote. I know that a lot of you are not interested in a lecture now, but what I'm offering to you is follow DAFT principles. I know it's daft, but it means data protection and privacy, accountability, fairness, and transparency. Okay. I don't want to go into details about this, and I have created a framework as well. So I call this a Spectra framework. It is actually a hodgepodge, if you will, of all the AI rules and governance models and guidelines created by OECD, the European AI Act, and various other international regulators, right? So safety and security, privacy and data protection, explainability and transparency, cooperation and harmonization, trust and accountability, responsibility and non-discrimination, advancement of society and environmental well-being. This is what is expected of organizations which are using AI. So I was reading it out, giving you time enough to just take a screenshot if you would have already. So this goes into all details. Now I'm just going to stop on my slides here. Now, I want to work with you. I've just got about 5 minutes to tell you how to work your AI. And let's see. Oops. My screen was too small. Okay, so this is, oh wait, I can move this to below. Okay, so I have a little more workspace. And this is all your pigeon that you're all sharing. But here, I'm going to start off with Microsoft 365. Now, I've just logged in. I've used a paid account on this. I can go to apps. I can go to Word. And I can open a blank document. Okay, bear with the loading. Now, straight away, it asks me using Copilot to draft. Now, there are two Copilots you will find here. This is just so there's one Copilot here who tells you what the document is about. Or you can come here and you can click on this icon. Now here, this is what we want to make the magic work, right? Create a report on how I handled my client's real property matter that I have to present to my boss. Okay, it also recognizes your bad spellings, like I said, preset. Now it is also giving me an auto prompt, include detailed steps. So if I hit tab, okay, let's see. Wow, it's still asking me to give more. So it's just making my job easier and easier, okay? Okay, enough. Too much. Don't get over enthusiastic on me. All right, now this is document 11. It's just created the whole report.
Very enthusiastic.
I'm very enthusiastic. It's just like one of those kanchong interns that I have in my office, right? But look at this. It tells me the introduction. It gives me the detailed step. It tells me the due diligence I've done, which I've not done, but you see what it can do. Strategic planning advisory, implementation of solutions, challenges faced, stakeholder management, successful outcomes. Okay. Now, please expand on the successful outcomes by at least 150 words. I don't know. I don't like planned stuff, you know. I like things that I don't know what's going to happen. So we are doing this for the first time. I'm doing it for the first time with you. Now it has expanded the successful outcomes, but it's ignored the whole thing, right? Now I'm annoyed with it. Expand it into this report lah, Bodo. Let me see what happens, whether it understands me or not. La is la, right? Okay, yeah, it's okay. It recognizes spelling mistakes. Your content includes language that doesn't support. Okay, there's a problem there. It doesn't matter. I just say keep it. Okay. Now you've just seen I've created a report, right? It's decent at the face of it. It contains things that I haven't thought about other stakeholders and solutions. Now, what happens here is I want to go to apps again, and I'm going to PowerPoint. I'm going to blank presentation. Okay. Now, create a presentation about, I'm just going to put a slash. Hang on. So this is one of the problems that ChatGPT normally has, as Microsoft has a problem with. So I put chat with Copilot. Now it's come here. Create a presentation from, now you see, Okay, has this document saved itself? Document 11. Okay. This is called the most recent MRF or most recent, open files or something like that, MRO, MRF. From document, what was it? Document 11, is it? See? Was it? No, it's not document 11. Okay, we are here. So just for all of you guys, I'm also an NTUC trainer. So this is an NTUC paid account, which they've kindly allowed me to use. And we have this here. Okay, let's just see file. Or let me just rename this. What did we call it? Real property. PPTY or PPP. Okay, now it is saved. Let's see if this recognizes the file. So here's one of the things you do with Copilot. If you just do a right click, it'll start looking at all the previous files that has been here. Now we called it, what did we call it? Real PPTY. Oh, it's looking for people. Oh, okay, okay. Let's look at all suggestions, files. Files. Executive summary report. There's some old document which is there. I'm not able to find. Is it this? No. So it has not located the file. But okay. Generally, because it's internet, it takes some time to. It's all uploading from Microsoft Word. Now you can see that it's already created some of the earlier documents, right? So there are some earlier documents. For example, if you see here, you can actually create the old documents. So let's say here, if you look at Microsoft Word here, you can see that this was what had previously been created and it has saved, right? Now the same thing is appearing on this. So mine is not saved yet. It's still working on Microsoft, whatever. However, you can also type here, create a presentation from, or create a presentation about a real property. Do you remember what we said? Real property, what? With a client that I need to my boss about a real property settlement. Okay, let's see what happens. Now this, it takes a bit of time. So while this is happening, what I want to share with you guys also is that if you open a Microsoft document, this is one of the latest things that has come out, right? If you're using a paid Microsoft 365, now your Copilot is included into it. So you can actually generate it out here. But this, again, does not talk to each other. The internet Microsoft, what we are using, actually has them talking to each other between applications. So I don't know why this hasn't appeared in this. But anyway, so while it was doing, you can see that it has created this. So let's look at how does your presentation look? Okay, this is full screen, is it? Oh, terrible. So this is, it's not a slideshow. So let's look at slideshow. No, it doesn't like it. It's as big as you can get. So it talks about an agenda, terms of settlement, ownership of property. It's created the entire slide for me, including pictures that you can use. Do you have any ideas? I can ask it to create. Okay, so let's escape from this and come back to our search bar. So it has created this. Excel also, so there are different aspects. Okay, we're almost going to wind up now, but I wanted to introduce, hang on, let me stop share first because I don't want you to see something on ChatGPT which you're not supposed to see. This is the first thing I need to do. Now I can share screen. Maybe I don't want you to see my fast searches and. Okay. Now, this is the reason why I prefer ChatGPT over Copilot, because Copilot is very good as a commercial application. It has things that talks to each other. Microsoft Word can talk to Microsoft PowerPoint. It did not work just now because it's still in the process of saving. It's a bit slow and draggy. That's what I didn't like about Microsoft Copilot at all. But do you have a question, Bozy? Give me a question that I can ask ChatGPT. Okay, just read out from one of those. Short question.
What liabilities do chatbots have using AI to advise customers?
Using AI to
advise customers.
Okay. Now, please note, I'm using ChatGPT 4, so for better or worse. Okay, so it gives me this answer. All the way to the end. Now, let me just move this. All right. Now, you see all this. Wow, so like, why you talk like lawyer? Huh? So what I'm going to do is, why you talk like lawyer? Huh? I mean, you know. Please use lots of slang and Singlish so I can understand lah. Bodoh. Hello. Okay. Ayo, sorry, ho. Okay, I talk more relaxed one. When using AI chatbot to talk with customers, got a few things can go wrong. One, must watch out. Now you see, this is what makes ChatGPT you. It has recognized English. It talk nonsense, misinformation, capo data privacy issue, follow rules, regulatory risk, protect customer, chop ideas, depend too much, over-reliance. Now, you can also ask for the same thing. Ideally, you don't want to do this. You want to open a new chat, right? But you can do it in the same chat and say, write me a 4-line or write me a short in okay. In fair Veronica, where we lay our scene, at last with eyes like stars so keen, she danced neath moon's silvery gleam, where lovers' hearts do stitch and seam. Such sights as dreams do dream. Not bad, right? Now you want to make it yours because we discussed a lot about it. Okay, not bad. How would Shakespeare, I'm trying this first time, write this if he was an abeng? I don't know.
Find out.
In Sengkang, where I park my ride, got one chobu, she catch my eye. She zeng her scooter, damn high class. We race down road, was super fast. Xiao liao her love, I want to chat. Chai.
I might fall in love with ChatGPT at this point.
Yes, so this is why I told you in the earlier this thing, right? I think we have time now. So we're going to call an end to this. There's, of course, a lot of stuff. I just want to share one last piece of, if with your permission, because I thought this was important for all of you. I said that I will try to share this. Patrick was talking about job losses. I said, no, look at job transformation. Do not look at job losses. So wisdom, AI, and the future, right? Okay, let's skip this. We don't have time for this. There are 4 quadrants about, basically employees who hate their job but are good at it, who love their job and are good at it, who are bad at their job but they love it, they hate their job and bad at it. So use AI is what I've said. Now, the universe comprises data. Awareness of data is knowledge. So you go study in Oxbridge and Harvard, which is Yale and Harvard. You come back. Bozy has gone studied in all these places, right? When she comes back, she's only knowledgeable. That's what is she intelligent? No, she is knowledgeable. When she applies that knowledge, it's intelligence. Her experience, because her upbringing has been different. She's faced her own travails and problems or whatever. She's grown up with her own experience. That experience of the intelligence which she has used from her knowledge is her wisdom. All of you have that. Nobody can take it away from you. You may have worked for 5 years or 5 months, but it is 5 months of wisdom plus the number of years you've been on this planet. So your wisdom is very unique, right? Okay. So my son helped me to create this. Wisdom is the function of a summation of the ratio of your knowledge to your intelligence plus your ever increasing experience. So W is wisdom, summation of knowledge, knowledge over intelligence, your experience influencing each knowledge intelligence interaction. F is the function that's your integration of your knowledge, intelligence, and experience. So when you look at your colleague, you both may have had 10 years of experience or 50 years of experience at the bar. But the way you approach problem is very unique, right? So that is why it's wisdom, your individual wisdom. And when you both add your wisdom, it's called collective wisdom. Now, why am I so bothered about this? So I created this in 2015. I always put a year to my slides, but then I always add if it's been updated. So if you see, my definition of AI has been the same from 2020. That definition has not changed, so I've retained it. Okay. So here's the thing. So how? Wisdom and DIEW. So DIE is DIEW, right? Data and knowledge. You're going to move from routine data processing or whatever routine jobs to interpreting complex results and deriving deeper insights. This is actually a half an hour to half a day course, because I train people how to use AI and move ahead. Because in the US, they say, I think this was attributed, if I'm not mistaken, to Sundar Pichai or one of those Indians in the big tech teams. It is not AI that will take away your job. It is the person who uses AI who will take away your job. It's not AI. It's the person using AI. So you're going to be head and shoulders above others. So you use AI mechanisms for overseeing, guiding, use your human intuition and decision-making, and analysis parameters and interpreting outputs. That's your application of your intelligence. Now, E is your experience is a multiplier. So don't forget the universe, the data, the knowledge, the intelligence and wisdom, right? So your experience comes in, understanding your own historical context with your industry you've worked with, your ethics, which you carry strongly with you, right? You don't just go murdering people. It's part of ethics not to. And our unique personal experiences. Okay, boring example, long one. And the last slide, use your wisdom as integration. That is what brings it all together. If you can add this DIEW or WIDE, however you want to put it, you will make sure that your job is going to be protected. So what is my strategy? Enhance your skill, continuous learning, role redefinition. Now, with my past experience, with my past knowledge, can I create a new role? You can always ask yourself that. I mean, we had a Bozy who added salt and pepper or spices in a particular way to a dish. I like what Stanley said. That's the secret sauce. So you add salt and pepper and the sauce, right? It's a completely new dish. So you redefine your role. You become a sauce maker, right? Ethical oversight. Your human judgment will always be there. So this is not really a thing which is meant for for hackers and malicious actors and bad actors. You will move on to human creativity and strategic thinking, which is going to be more fun part of your work. You don't have to do the useless parts anymore. So learning and development, empowerment and ownership, collaborations and connections, impact and recognition, voice worker needs based on AI via direct channels. I don't want to hold you guys longer than you already are. So that's all, folks, from my side. Okay, these are other courses that I conduct.
Thank you so much, YT. That was, fast and furious.
Yes, really, are you a wonder?
Yeah, but my eyes were glued on your computer this entire time, and the amount of information that you've shared. Obviously, this could be a whole year course instead of just 5-10 minutes or even half hour. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have stayed with us till this very moment, thank you for spending your evening. I don't know what you took away, but I know that if lawyering is not working out, I can go be a sauce maker. And hopefully that works out for me as well. Because AI has so much potential, and it seems like everybody is using it these days, and we can only catch up with time by also educating ourselves on it. Thank you so much, YT. And just a gentle reminder in the last bit for all our participants, a survey will actually pop up from your screen for your completion, and we appreciate any comments, feedback, or even further queries that you may have to improve our further webinars as well. With that, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Pro Bono SG, we would like to thank all of you for joining us this evening, and we hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.